We don't have a lot of time left, and I want to use it on your book.
Great.
Your book on FDR, The Defining Moment. It's a terrific book. And when I was looking through it, I was wondering, I wanted to ask you to build a second Mount Rushmore for me.
Yeah.
Because you're such a student of the presidency and presidents. And obviously, if there were a second Mount Rushmore, you believe that FDR should be on it. Who else would be on it?
That's a great question. I have the sculptor of Mount Rushmore in my book, Gortson Borglum, because he was asked about President Hoover, and he said, if you put a rose in Herbert Hoover's hand, it would wilt. And that, I thought, summarized pretty well Hoover's inability
the way you
to communicate.
capture in here, that I think people, we weren't there, we can't know what America was like when FDR became president.
The people I would put on in the post, Teddy Roosevelt era, because he was the last president of Mount Rushmore. I would not put Wilson on. I think that as we learn more about Woodrow Wilson, we realize he really wasn't a very good president in many ways, even though he was president during World War I. I would definitely put FDR on. I would put Truman on, because I think that he was, his presidency was so busy. There were so many critical issues, and for a man who came from the people, his batting average was astonishingly high in making the right call on a whole different series of issues. I would not put, I'll get to Reagan.
Okay,
I would not put Eisenhower on, because I think his greatness was really during World War II.
You're taking people off.
I would put Kennedy on. Now people say, well, why? He didn't get anything done. He didn't get any bills through Congress.
Transformative.
No, it wasn't because he was transformative in his appeal to younger people, any of that. That doesn't get you on Mount Rushmore.
Okay.
October of 1962. Richard Russell, chairman of the Armed Services Committee. William Fulbright, chairman of the Committee on Foreign Relations, both more than 20 years older than JFK. They know more in their pinky about foreign policy than he does. They go to him and say, you've got to bomb Cuba. You've got to bomb Cuba. And he says, no, we've decided not to. We're going to have a naval blockade instead. And we found out in the years since that if we bombed Cuba, we very, very possibly would have had a nuclear exchange. And Castro has said, look, it was launch on warning. In other words, when the word came that they were bombing, that's when we were going to launch a nuclear weapon. So they had more nukes on the island of Cuba than we knew then. It wasn't until many years later that we realized they'd already gotten a lot of nukes onto the island. So I think JFK saved, in some way, saved the world and should go on for that. I think Ronald Reagan should go on because he restored America's confidence in itself. And even though I disagreed very strongly with a lot of what he actually did,
the way his legacy is being burnished, just almost organically.
Yeah, and I think in some ways wrongly. I interviewed Gorbachev.
But you don't deny it's happening. I mean,
no, it's happening.
Trying to figure it out.
And because I think it's about leadership. Reagan loved FDR. I've got quite a number of footnotes that have Reagan in this book, because I interviewed Michael Deaver and some others. Reagan voted for FDR 4 times, and that was the role that he was playing. And he played it very, very well. And they actually had more in common than you might imagine, Reagan and Roosevelt. And neither of them was the sharpest knife in the drawer, but they were smart enough. And they both succeeded engineers who had twice the IQs and couldn't lead. And both of them were leaders. And so I do think that
they inspired people.
They inspired people. And that's what you've got to do in the big theater of the presidency. My book is about a theatrical act that Franklin Roosevelt performed that saved capitalism and democracy when they were literally on the line in 1933. And we had people who wanted a dictator, prominent people, influential people. And it was all the banks were closed, the financial system of the United States had melted down. Yeah, so most books are about World War II and about FDR and World War II. I was more interested in his first act.
Yeah. Are you going to write a book about this campaign?
I'm not going to write about the campaign, but I think I'm likely to write about something more current, depending on how things go. It would have the campaign in it, about the era we're about to have, really about next year, about 2009, which I think will be a very, very important
the real
year.
beginning of this century.
And Yeah, and I think I was just on Capitol Hill this morning talking to some aides about this, and I think whomever the new president is going to have an opportunity for major legislation that we haven't seen in this country in quite a long time.
That's a good last word. Jonathan, if we had more time, we'd go on forever. You're fabulous.
Yeah.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Carol.
Thank you, everyone. I'll see you next